So let me now move to Nasser. So Nasser, you are an expert, on infrastructures and cities, and you've done a lot of work on that. So why don't you please come in and tell us that, and I remember that you were the first managing director of the Infrastructure Development Finance Corporation of India. And thus your thoughts, particularly for our international audience, will be of great interest. This is SDG goal number 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. Over to you, Nasser.
Thank you very much, Chouhan, Mr. Chouhan. Let me just start with a broader ambit for 2 minutes. Never has the globe been actually stopped. And I think COVID actually stopped the world. The Second World War was the last time that we had global disruption of a huge scale. But this one shut us down almost overnight. What does it say? Because after the Second World War, we built completely new institutions to face the post-war world. You saw Bretton Woods institutions, you saw the IMF, you saw the strengthening of the UN, you saw the World Bank, the whole trade framework. So I think there was a complete change in how we thought about the world. Pre-COVID, we had a normal. That normal was actually heading very swiftly into an abyss. So in a sense, we can't go back to that normal. It's a new normal that we're going to define after COVID. So I think that, given that setting, that we have to rethink, and there are 4 words that come to my mind that's going to be very critical, which is integration, partnerships, institutional design, and intellectual capital. Without these, we are not going to make the sorts of changes that we are going to require. We also have a phase in global affairs where we are moving into nationalism, away from global cooperation. So in a sense, it's going to be extremely important for us to look at global cooperation, solving problems together, and working together. Now, as far as cities are concerned, I've watched cities for 30 or 40 years, at least in India. Asia, China's done much better, obviously, with a centralized regime. But in India, I have seen that all our cities have just grown without adequate governance, adequate infrastructure, adequate institutions, adequate governance mechanisms. And I think here, very critical is the governance framework that we adopt for how we're going to manage our cities. There are 3 schools of planning in India for the whole of the country. I was very instrumental in setting up the Indian Institute of Human Settlements, which is a new university that's going to create a new intellectual capital of youngsters who will be trained fully in sustainable urban practice. Now, we need a whole new dimension if we are going to release this energy to creating sustainable cities. It's not going to happen with the existing framework of governance and institutions. The question is, when will they change? I haven't seen it in my lifetime. I don't know whether it'll happen in my child's lifetime, but one hopes that this actually happens. COVID has had the maximum impact on cities worldwide. The lockdown that India went into, one of the most dramatic lockdowns, actually had the result of compressing people rather than releasing people. So in fact, in people who are already cramped were even compressed further. And those that didn't have homes or migrant labor actually left the city in millions to go back to their villages and towns and actually spread the virus even further afield. So in a sense, again, the governance, the public policy response was probably inappropriate given where we were at the time. So what I would strongly urge is that we create some form of rethinking of the institutional framework of our cities, how we are governed. For example, who is accountable for the city? Is it the government? Is it the state government? Is it the Bombay, say in Bombay, the Bombay Municipal Corporation or the Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation? Who is responsible? The question is, we don't even have the idea of a mayor who could be the CEO of a city and is accountable to the city. Every city in the world has a mayoral system, for example. We don't. So in a sense, we have democracy right across the spectrum of Indian political life, but we don't have democracy in the city. So in a sense, we need to redefine these processes if we are going to get sustainability. We need institutions, we need new intellectual capital, and we need a governance framework that would give you that ability to actually redefine how we build and how we manage our city. So I have a sort of feeling that unless these things are addressed, we are not going to see much change in the way we do things. Today, it's survivability in the city that's just about happening. Our health infrastructure in most cities are totally inadequate for populations that have grown in those cities. In the small towns, they're even more inadequate. So in a sense, even the basic health infrastructure needs to be rebuilt. Urban neighborhoods has to be rebuilt. Civil society institutions have been very instrumental in actually helping the city through this crisis. If it wasn't for them, a lot of people wouldn't have been fed. And then, of course, the whole governance framework and how we work together as companies, as businesses, as government. And so this new partnership is going to be very, very critical for the institutional redesign. We need to set up the outcomes that we want and then work backwards in terms of what sort of institutional arrangement is going to give us those outcomes. You know, expecting change by doing the same things is a definition of madness defined by Einstein. So we cannot remain where we are. We have to redesign the way we think about the city and how those cities are going to address the needs of its population as we move forward. And of course, being as sustainable as possible. But at the moment, they have to be livable for the vast majority of their population.
Thank you, Nasser. I think very extremely important points. You know, governance framework is extremely important. And I like your idea of sustainable urban practice. I wish through this other institution that you have set up, I mean, that should take off.